So I am officially recording and I am super, super stoked because I am here with the one and only Kristin Hanson, who
Hey.
is a top performing loan officer at loanDepot, Chairman's Elite, and has just done amazing things in the wake of like having these really, I don't know what you would call them, but industry legends in the business. And, it's crazy because you've just done so much. And so for me, I wanted, as my first Hanson on the show, to get you. So I asked you first. I was like, I'm not asking any of the other Hansons. You're the first one I want to go with because I do feel like there's an amazing story. So thank you so much for being here today, Kristin.
This is the first time I've beaten my brother in something, so I appreciate it.
Well, you've just done amazing things, and so a couple of questions that I wanted to start off with is: do you remember how you and I met? And I don't think you do, but I remember. And I'm going to tell you a story about it. But do you remember?
Nope.
This is awesome.
Memories of seeing you occasionally.
Mhm.
You and your wife are both very sharp dressers, so it
Oh,
was a
thank
little
you.
intimidating when I would see you at these events. I'd be like, oh, they're probably busy, with
So
people.
funny. No, so when I first met you, it was 2014, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know where you were in your mortgage career, but I kind of assumed that you were just entering it.
Yeah.
And it was at a Todd Duncan event, actually,
Okay.
in Palm Springs. And I was at a table talking with Dan Hanson, who also is your father. And we were
Also,
sitting there and I just met him for the first time. So I was very engaged. I'd never heard of him. And I had a buddy of mine who was also my boss. And he was like telling me about, okay, this is the person you want to meet. This is the person you want to meet. And we got to Dan and he was like, telling these stories. And it was like everybody kind of congregating around Dan. And you walked up with Alec and he's like, these are my kids. And you both were like, it's funny you say that because you were both really sharp dressed. And I was super intimidated by meeting you guys. And I remember Alec was very standoffish, which come to realize that's totally Alec in social situations. And you're like, hey guys, what's going on? And it was like a very different, vibe when I first met you. And I just remember thinking like, they're going to crush it. Those, you both were entering the business. I don't know where Alec was at the time, but you both at the time looked really young to me. So, but yeah, we met in 2014. And so
wow.
I want to start off with, how did you end up picking mortgage as your thing? Because I almost feel like when I have two little children and I have an adult child, and my adult child, who I also have a grandchild with, she is in title already, right? So she's kind of already leaning into what we do and is, yelling at me about how she hates mortgage people sometimes because they're just all over her from a title perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then my two little kids, I wonder, like, will they end up in mortgage? And my son is like, yeah, I'm just going to go work with you. My daughter wants nothing to do with it. And so my question for you is, how did you end up here? What was like the deciding factor to come into this business?
Well, it was fear of doing a job interview, really. So I was actually planning to get my master's in marriage family therapy. And then my husband decided that he wanted to be a sports broadcaster, which meant we were going to be moving all over the place every couple of years. And I was in grad school. I was in like my final year of grad school. But that program, the marriage family therapy, is state specific. So I was like, great. So we're going to move all over the United States. And I've just got this, almost completed this degree for something I'm not going to be able to use. And so we moved like really quickly to Abilene, Texas, where he got his first job. And when I got there, I asked my dad, like, what do I do? And he was like, go get a job at a title company. So I did. I got a job at a title company in Abilene. But then we moved to Bakersfield after a year, back to California. And I was like, now what? And my dad was like, we got a branch there, go and get a job there doing, picking up the trash. And I was like, okay. Because I was so afraid, like my background was in therapy and I was well educated, but I had zero experience doing anything. And I was so afraid that people were going to I hate interviews. I hate rejection. And so my dad was like, just go here. And he had a good relationship with the branch manager. And so I showed up and she was like, all right, you can work in the setup department. And that was it. I was like, okay, thanks.
So you get into it, right? And what a weird hack that you had, because you're like, yeah, I just didn't want to do a job interview. And it's funny how in life we find these things that we hack ourselves into because we were afraid of doing it one way. So we tried it a different way and we ended up executing one way or another, which is what you did. But to have a fear of rejection, which we all have, I'm terrified of it. I have to make calls to recruits, to LOs that are doing really well at another company and are being treated really well. And I got to call them and convince them why it's cool to come and work here and why we're going to do great things together. Right. And that's a hard call to make. But for you decided to go into the business that is full of rejection.
I had no idea. I just thought it was the easy way out.
So did that fear ever diminish, or do you have it the same way I do? Like the lump in your throat when you got to go out there and create business?
It depends. It depends if there's something more motivating than the fear, like my need to pay my mortgage or need to, eat. Then I will, be like, forget it. What the worst they can say is no. So let's just do it.
That's it.
Kind of one of the things that, like you mentioned, the sales mastery, I think I get a lot of tools from that and having a coach be like, here's what you have to do this week. And I'm like, okay, because I want to please her. So I want to get on the call the next time and be like, yeah, I didn't do anything. I'm just paying you money to do nothing. So, I put little fires under me to keep me going.
So does that get you excited? I mean, does the sales process get you excited as you go out there and you start building business? Because for me, it really is like what I love is, at the end of the day, I want to be able to look at a loan officer over a period of time and that they say, hey, I'm doing better because of something that he helped me do. Right. And for you, you're really helping a lot of customers get into a situation that they might not have otherwise been in, whether it's a better financial situation with a refinance or helping somebody legit get into a house. How does that impact you and how do you look at it from that perspective?
So, I mean, I would say over the years, it's changed. Initially, I was very fearful. I didn't, I still feel like there's new guidelines every day. And I'm like, which I was able to do this yesterday, what just happened, especially with COVID, that's kind of thrown me back for a loop again. But the biggest thing is now I know when I tell somebody, initially before I would pre-qualify someone, I would have a senior loan officer review everything and be like, I want to send them out there. What am I missing? What do I need? And I was very fearful of, sending a prequal letter, which is funny. Mm-hmm. As I've been in the business, I've seen lenders send prequals with no paperwork, no credit, no DU run, just woo, like somebody go, Yep. And I can't, I'm so afraid of telling somebody, that would be my biggest fear, saying you're approved, getting them in a contract and then them not being approved. And that's not happened to me. The only time I've pre-qualified somebody and then it didn't work out was because something on their side, not because I didn't do my job. And that's really important to me. And I would say now at this point, I'm a lot more confident. I don't necessarily need someone to review anything. Occasionally I'll be like, Steven, on this jumbo that I'm brokering, like what? And, he knows all the answers, which is good. But for the most part, I know when I talk to somebody, I'm confident that I'm the right one for the job.
Well, that's it, right? And it's surprising how many loan officers exist that will just pencil whip is what I like to call it, that document and give it out as a pre-qual without really running to you, without validating assets, income, the deal breaker things that snag people. And I'm sure you've won a lot of deals from it, but it's amazing to see how often it happens. And where does that come from with you? Like, because you do say that's actual fear, like you fear letting somebody down.
Yeah, I do. I don't like to let people down. I think I have a past life where I was that person that was a disappointment and let people down and you couldn't trust me. And so I think I carry a little bit of that old life, old self. But also this is for most people, this is the biggest purchase of their lives. And they're already so anxious, and I can feel that. And I kind of like take that on and I'm like, okay. And I'm like on the roller coaster with them. So just for my own peace of mind, I need, all the boxes checked off.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's the essence in my opinion, of being a loan officer, right? And there's a term we used to use in my Wells Fargo days where we would say, if you don't package this the right way, then that's mortgage malpractice. You are doing something that can really impact somebody at the tail end where they're in a moving truck and they're expecting to move in, and you gotta rip the Band-Aid and tell somebody they can't do that, which luckily, as many deals as we push through, I have never had to really have to make that call.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's definitely a fear, but you touched on something that I don't think that you realize. You kind of brushed over it, but the vulnerability is a really big thing in how we connect with people. And I've talked about it before, but I think that it's super important. You just said something. You said, I've been a disappointment in my previous life, or, I'm summarizing, but what does that mean exactly?
When I was a teenager, 15, 16, I was a handful, and I got involved with alcohol, and I had a lot of run-ins with police and at that time, and then it kind of only progressed and got worse, my drinking, until I was finally my family was at the point where it was kind of like, it's her or us, like they were so destroyed with my behavior and the fear that I was causing them and the crazy behavior that they were like, okay, either you go get help or you go away and don't come back. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I did go to get help, and I've been sober for 15, well, January will be 15 years. So, but that experience and the consequences of my actions and everything completely, and me stepping away from alcohol, completely changed the person that I was on the path to becoming who I believe, God or whatever meant me to be. And that's this person, not the person that was, drowning in alcohol.
So stress, right, in our business tends to really push the barrier and the limits that we have within ourselves. You had mentioned in a side conversation with me that you had been 14 years sober. Amazing. Congratulations, by the way. And I know that now it's just a way of life for you, but I would imagine that when you see that stress bubbling up, is that something that you're constantly fighting with every day? Do you feel like that's another figure? You're just like, I got this, I'm moving forward, or do you have different triggers outside of the stress levels of our business?
That's an interesting question. I don't want to drink because I just know then my whole life will just go in the toilet. I may overeat ice cream as a substitute.
Good for you. Yeah. Good for you.
But yeah, no, there's a lot of tools that are needed to incorporate into just my life for my mental health. Meditation, yoga, that kind of stuff. My current boss has been a really big help with the stress thing. He always has a bigger pipeline, more going on, and he's managing. And his kind of motto every time I go in there, like ready to pull my hair out, he's like, it's all going to work out. It always works out.
It always does.
Yes. So I just try to adopt that as best I can. Occasionally I'll get to the edge where I'm ready to scream. But for the most part, I do, not to completely tangent here, but I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And so like having that, and then the treatment I did for that, it was like, there's bigger things going on in this world than the closing of somebody's house, you know, and even Stephen will say, like, nobody's dying, you know, like this, I know it's a big deal. That definitely, and everybody's nervous, but you have your health. We're going to figure it out. It's going to work out. You know, and there are worse things happening in the world and with people personally than, you know, whether your loan closes today or tomorrow.
So with the MS, I mean, when you think about like, well, let me ask a couple of questions because I don't have a lot of data around this, right? And I don't know a lot of people who have been diagnosed with MS, but how at such a young age, and I don't know if this is an older person or just it has no, you know, barriers, but how did you know you had this? What were some of the symptoms and what was that story?
So this is crazy. Okay, so MS a lot of times gets diagnosed when you're 29, 30, early
Oh,
30
wow. Okay.
is when I would say the highest percentage of people get diagnosed. A lot of people lose vision in an eye or something like that, and that's kind of like a early sign. For me, I had just moved to Bakersfield. So we had just moved. I'm starting this new career. We were getting married. My husband and I were getting married in 4 months. So there was so much stress going on. And I think that maybe was like the catalyst for sort of triggering my MS to show itself. I started feeling really dizzy, kind of like seasick, not vertigo, not like spinning, but just like seasick. And I went to, I knew no one, I had no doctor, you know, so I asked a friend, like, who's your doctor? And then I went to just a primary care doctor. And I was like, I'm kind of dizzy. I don't really know what's going on. And they sent me to like a inner ear, you know, and that guy was like, it's probably just stress. You're fine. I was like, okay. And I went back to the primary care doctor and I was like, I guess, I don't know, stress is what they said. And and thank God for this lady, you know, doing like her due diligence, because she could brush me off. And I found out later with other friends that I've met that have MS, you know, it's like nobody gets diagnosed with this right away. You go through years of crap happening before somebody kind of ties the pieces together. But this doctor was like, you know what, let's just do an MRI just to make sure. And when we got the MRI results back, she said, it looks like you have multiple sclerosis. And I remember I just started crying, but I had no idea what that meant. You know, there's something going on in my brain. It's a thing and it doesn't sound good, you know, and she's referring me to a neurologist. And then of course, when you research things, that's horrible and frightening.
Never get on Google. Like,
yeah,
I mean, my
I
doctor
think
told me up front, just
everything,
don't do it.
right. It's only the worst case things that get, you know, brought up. So what happened was, I think a lot of people think multiple sclerosis and then that means you're going to be in a wheelchair. And of course, that was where I went with that too. And that's, you know, unfortunately not out of the picture for me. Anything can happen. It's your entire central nervous system that's affected. So brain, spinal cord, the whole thing. I didn't have any, you know, disease in my spine. It was only in my brain and it was small and minimal. And so they started me on drugs. I had to give myself injections every day, which had its own psychological kind of factor to it. I was starting in the mortgage business. And that was right when I ended up at Sales Mastery where we met. I had just been diagnosed.
Oh, really?
Yep.
What year was this? This is that right around that same time?
Well, I mean, I think so, because I remember being, maybe it was the year after.
Okay.
I got diagnosed in 2013, the very end, November. So maybe then we met in 2014, that following year at Sales Mastery.
Wow. So you're how long from like initial, like this could be a mess to you, and then you go search, you go do all your research on it online, which is terrible to do. And then you end up getting a legit diagnosis to then, like, how was that period of time from that and then actually start the therapy on it?
I think it was probably like 2 or 3 months. So the primary doctor going, and then she referred me to a local neurologist who then referred me to an MS specialist at Cedar-Sinai in LA. And that was who put me on the medication and got me started.
Wow. And so the process, and you've been dealing with this since, for years now. And how do you cope with all that? I mean, it's just a way of life at this point. And, what is and then I know that one of the things we had talked about is that you had actually gone through an intense chemotherapy process with it.
Yeah. So initially, giving yourself shots every day was just a reminder that you're sick. And it was very hard, sort of emotionally, I think.
Yeah. Even if you're having an amazing day, you have to stop and inject yourself. And
Right.
that
And
kind
be
of
like,
brings
oh, yeah, this
reality
is
back
what you
in.
have. And you're going to end up in a wheelchair, right? Or whatever is
Oh,
going to happen to you.
yeah.
And I'm also supposed to get married, to this guy who I said, if you want to walk, like do it now, because we don't know what's going to happen to me, And, he didn't. He's still here. But every day, every feeling that I have in my body, I would be like, is that MS? Am I getting worse? Like, what's happening? It was just a constant fear that things were happening and I was getting worse. Because just because you're taking these drugs doesn't mean that they're even going to work. So I kept research. I did my own research and I found this stem cell transplant that was being done in the United States, but also in Russia was like kind of where people were doing it. And I talked to people and I got online and I asked my MS specialist about it. And she kind of like laughed at me and was like, that's like, don't even, think about that. And I was like, oh, I'm thinking about that because there's a chance that it can stop my progression and then I don't have to live like this. And so all of the pieces kind of fell into place for me to get that treatment. At this point, we'd moved to Texas for my husband's latest job. We were in San Antonio and I saw a new neurologist and we thought I was having a relapse, not with the alcohol, but with the MS. That's the same term. And they send a nurse to your house to hook you up to IV steroids. And the nurse was like, hey, I had a patient who had MS, but he did this thing. And I was like, I want to do that thing, that stem cell transplant. Can I have the guy's name and number? And so he texted his patient and the guy was like, yeah, here you go. He said you can call him.
Wow.
So I called him and he told me this is where he went and this is how it worked. And I took the information to my new neurologist and said, I want to do this. And she said, surprisingly, I think you'd be a really good candidate. And I had just had my biggest year, although I say that, but the year before was my first year as a loan officer. And then the second year I was in Texas and I got this builder like JV account with our company. And so I had made more money than I'd ever made in my life. And I was able to have this great insurance that covered the treatment 100%, even though it's considered elective. And then I went on disability for almost a year because I had the treatment. Basically, they take my stem cells out of my bone marrow and then kind of like put them over there. And then they blast me with chemo and a couple other different heavy drugs to wipe out my immune system entirely. So I'm in isolation in a hospital at Northwestern in Chicago. And I have no immune system. And then they put my stem cells back in and rebuild I have to sit there until my white blood cell count comes up and I can go home.
How long is this process?
So you do one round of chemo and then you have like a 4-week break and then you come back and you're in the hospital for about 3 weeks.
So are you flying back and forth or do you just get a place?
Yeah, I flew to Chicago, just stayed one night and got one round of chemo and then flew home. Then I came back and I stayed, I was hospitalized in the hospital for I think 20 days doing the chemo and then the reintroduction of the stem cells and then just waiting for the white blood cell count to go back up.
So was that a painful process or was it just
only 2 nights was it really bad? But for the most part, everything was great. They made sure you were comfortable. It really wasn't bad at all what was bad was the coming home and just the sort of psychological, I guess, emotional aspect of everything. So I just did this treatment. Now I'm at home. I'm super bloated from steroids. I'm bald because I've lost my hair and I can't really go out and do stuff. And not that I want to. And then there's like, did it work? I don't know, And so you're just kind of in this purgatory almost, trying to figure out if anything feels better or different, or, and then there's side effects from the treatment. So I developed a thyroid disorder from that, which they told me this is going to happen. Probably like a heavy amount of our patients end up with thyroid issues. And so, and then I'm in these groups with these people who are great, but also can scare you because it didn't work for them or something worse happened to them. So it was a lot. And I was in a new city again. It was a lot, but
so at this point, oh, sorry. What city are you in at this point?
San Antonio, Texas.
Okay. And go ahead.
Well, so at this point I get an MRI every year. And so far I've done it for 3 years and there's been no progression. So we think at this point that it's done what it was supposed to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It's a huge relief. I mean, I still have fear, but it's not in the forefront of my mind like it was before, where every time I felt something in my body, I was like, am I going down? Like, what's happening?
Yeah. And then now you got like the whole COVID thing going on. So you're just like, that's a whole nother layer of fear. But yeah, no, I do know the walking and looking over your shoulder for another shoe to drop. And you've had this extraordinary amount of things that have happened to you.
Shit.
Or things that have happened that honestly, you're probably a lot harder on yourself. But I think that like, even when you just talk about it, you talk about it in such a way that you have this amazing sense of calmness and zero victim mentality around it. Just like, I got to deal with this and we're moving on. And where do you think that comes from?
Time. I certainly had that victim mentality every time with everything that I've had to go through along the way. And sometimes it comes back heavier than not, but as you get older and you meet more people, you kind of start to hear stories of other people who, things aren't great either. And they're still just, they're showing up, they're going to work, they're taking care of their family, they're participating in life, and they're not just crawling into a hole. And, and one of my vows to my husband in my wedding was that, I would just keep fighting, to give him the wife that he, deserves.
That's an amazing statement, because it is so hard, at times, especially as you're moving from city to city to city. That adds an entire crazy level of complexity and stress to everything, right? And so I'm going to switch gears on you really quickly. What did you think about San Antonio when you lived there?
I loved it. It was like a small, big city. And I loved, seeing deer everywhere, and the people were amazing and nice. And I could have stayed there forever. I really could have.
So I'm born and raised from San Antonio.
Oh,
and
seriously?
It's my spot. Yeah. So when I found out that you were living there and that you had like an in with the Spurs, I was like, I don't know her, but I need to figure out, like, when I'm there, like, can she just hook me up for another? I just need to meet these guys. And your husband was there at a time when you were just one of the, like, that team just at the time.
Insane. Yeah.
And I think they didn't even make it to the playoffs, but that's okay. Cause but I like, there's not a lot of people that I admire. And I don't know if you agree with this. It's okay if you don't, but like, one of the people that, like, I would love to have dinner with, they always say, like, who would you like to, Popovich is my guy. Like, I would love to have a dinner with Popovich, because not only is a guy like a foodie, he is also a wine connoisseur. I would just love to meet this dude.
But he is also so harsh. Yeah, Casey has clips of interviewing Pop and him just being, Casey, what were your thoughts after the game? And he'd be like, they were good thoughts. Oh, okay. Like he's so rough on reporters.
Report the best.
I think my husband will say that like he has a lot of, Pop was one of his favorite people to talk to because he was so tough, but he also, it's because he kind of gets it. There's more stuff, bigger things going on in the world than a basketball game.
But that's what you get when you talk to him. But I've seen like people stitch all the clips together of how mean he is to reporters.
So mean.
And then every now and again he'll throw you a bone where it's like, I don't know if you ever did this with Casey, but if he ever just like nudged him or say, you want that, like that little bit of something, just tell me we're good, but I don't do it often.
Mm-mm. Also, my husband had no clout. I could not have gotten you a ticket to anything. I could have done nothing.
Good.
Just work for the local news.
Which news cast did he work with?
They had like a duopoly, so it was like NBC, gotcha. It was like Channel 4 and something else.
Gotcha.
Don Harris and Chuck Mikatenek were the two people that he worked on.
Well, what a cool job to have had and to be a part of it at a really good time in basketball with the Spurs. But totally. San Antonio is probably one of my favorite places. And since I've moved, and I moved out of San Antonio in '99, which is the first time they, like in my lifetime, that they won the championship. And then, I've wanted to go back ever since. So I agree. It's like, if I'm in the airport, I will run into somebody I know because it is the biggest small town I've ever been in. So so funny. So a couple more questions, and this has been really good for me, but how is what all these challenges that you've had, how have they impacted you from a mortgage perspective in your business? And do you feel like they've had zero impact, or do you feel like that has built character for you on how you establish relationships and, all those things? How has it impacted your mortgage career?
I think that like I said, trying to take the stress and, the fear of missing a close date, which doesn't happen ever, by the way.
Ever.
But the fear of it happening, trying to remind myself, like Steven says, like nobody's dying, like it's fine. Like everybody's going to be okay, and realizing that, I definitely have a lot less tolerance for what I will put up with from people that are going to be rude and aggressive. And I think I used to take, whatever was thrown at me because I needed the business. But at this point, I'm doing very well, which is I'm very grateful for. And I have very strong referral partners that if somebody comes and is out of line, I'm like, you know what, if this isn't really a good fit, I can tell. Why don't you, I think you should go get your funding somewhere else, do financing somewhere else. And that has been a huge burden to just be like, I'm not gonna, I'm giving you money. So I don't know why you're yelling at me,
It's the funniest thing. I always tell LOs that I work with, we're just financing the money. Why are we trying to solve the world's problems? That's their they're trying to get inspections or trying to get something fixed at the house. I'm like, that's not our job. Like our job is we're giving the money and we do a really good job with that.
Right.
Once we start complicating it and getting our nose into stuff and like outside of our lane, that's when mistakes happen. That's when we, put ourselves at risk. But I totally agree with you. What an empowering moment for a loan officer, because I've seen this happen with not only leaders who fire asshole LOs, but I've seen it with LOs who fire asshole realtors. Right. And
right,
so,
right. And clients,
so what an empowering moment. So, cause when you're starting off, you're taking everything like, I'll pay what you need flyers. I got them. You need this. I got it. Like whatever you need. And then the moment comes, they're like, stop, I don't need this. Do you remember the first time that happened where you like empowered yourself to fire a client?
Yeah. I have a couple, one was, I'll tell you this story of this guy recently because my assistant just had to deal with him again this morning. So we were dealing with that. But, I said, okay, I see you own this other property. So I need to see the homeowner's insurance statement since you're going to keep the home. And he says, no, that's none of your business. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I understand that you don't want to share that information, but it's required. Like, I don't personally care, but like, if you want me to do this loan, this is what I need. He's like, no, none of your business, mind your business. And I was like, you know what? If you want to get your loan somewhere else, do it. If there's somewhere else that can do this without having to follow all the guidelines that us normal lenders have to follow, you're welcome to go there. But if you're going to have me work on your file, send in your homeowner's insurance policy, and then, again, this morning. And so I teach, what's been taught to me, I'm teaching to my assistant, who's awesome. Shout out Yami. So today we needed him to sign something and he's like, I'm not signing anything. And she's like, hey, do you want the money or not? Like, that easy. Sign it, don't sign it, get it in today or you're done, and it's like, I don't know why people are so angry with us, but they, me personally, like, I have not offended you yet. We've barely even talked. Give me some time. It might happen. But at this point, I've done nothing wrong. So just learning to say, like, I'm sorry, this isn't going to work. Or, one more outburst like this, isn't okay. But I'll tell you, my first time I hung up on somebody. She was screaming and just saying the same thing over again that wasn't applicable to what we were talking about. And I said, this conversation is over. We're not getting anywhere. And then she's screaming. I said, I told her I'm going to hang up and we will have to have this discussion another time. And it's just screaming. And I just clicked and I hung up.
Oh, good for you. You still did the deal, right?
Oh, yeah. Because she was a client. She was a client from my builder. And so I will, obviously work on it, but I was not going to sit and get yelled at. I was like,
well, that's a really important thing, right? Is know your worth in this business, because we do something that is pretty remarkable. We're helping people get money and we're pretty darn good at it. And so when you get all the pushback and just people being jerks, it's like, I don't need it. And it's not worth my well-being for me to continue down this path. And so I think that that's a really powerful and empowering, I've seen it happen a lot of times where we tend to build these false sense of security with whether it's business or people. And then you realize that life goes on without them and you're fine. And whether it's a business relationship, a client, in my case, sometimes it's loan officers, but it's not worth your well-being at times. And so, I have this whole thing in my head that I've been playing around with it for one of my posts, but it's like fire. If you want to change culture, fire assholes. Mm-hmm. And it's a quote I heard, but it's such a but I got to figure out how to do it in a way that I don't offend anybody. And so that's kind of what I'm playing around with. But it's like, and honestly, the only people it's going to offend are the people that know they're assholes.
Yeah, exactly. I would say do it anyway.
Yeah. So I've been playing around with that one, and it's like, I have these little anecdotes on stuff and I've been working it out. But so tell me a little bit about your most challenging, I don't know if you would call it like a mountain you had to climb being a loan officer, but what was the most challenging times being a loan officer? And it might have even been kind of dealing with, the medical stuff while you're trying to grow. Maybe it was a move, but what are some of the things what is something that you remember distinctively, like that you had to overcome as a loan officer?
So I actually had to, get with my mortgage coach about this. But, I am a Hanson, so I have a little bit of wit, a little bit of that joke, to me. But I also relied heavily on the way I felt about myself to approach clients or realtors. If I felt like my hair looked good and I was in a cute outfit or whatever, I felt like I looked good, I felt more confident about asking for business or telling people why they should do business with me. Not anything to do with because I'm the best at what I do, but more like outer, superficial reasons. And when I moved to Florida, I was bald. I didn't have any hair. And so I had wigs that I had bought, to just because whenever you're walking around with no hair, people always, some people want to say things and or get involved in a conversation, and then I have to be like, no, I didn't have cancer. Like, it's not. And then they're like, oh, well, like, what do you, it's awkward.
It's so awkward that
I just wear the wig to,
yes.
Yeah. And then also I didn't think I wanted people, future realtor partners to know that I was sick. Cause then they're going to be like, well, I can't give her business. Cause what if she gets sick again? Or what if, and then, so I had so much fear about that. And I'm wearing these wigs and I'm always afraid someone's going to hug me and it's going to come off or something's going to be weird.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
1,000,000 degrees in Florida and
yes.
humid, and I'm sweating because I have this thing on my head. And I'm so insecure with the way that I look.
Because you think everybody notices, although no one notices.
Absolutely. Nobody's even noticed I've entered the room, but I'm like, they're all talking about my wig, how it doesn't match my eyebrow color or whatever.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And so I had to, admit that I didn't have the confidence that I thought I had. Right. And that it was all just a bluff with how I thought I looked and felt in my skin at the time when I went and held open houses and hustled, with flyers and did that kind of stuff. And now here I am basically feeling like a shell of Kristin. And I had to go and start my business over and be like, hey, like, why should somebody really send their business to me? Because this is not, this is gone. And I still gained a bunch of weight. So I was a little fluffier. But it was like, I don't know. I had to find out my self-confidence and my ability to do my job. I had to find that. As opposed to just relying on, a joke or whatever.
Well, but that's really like an interesting way to have almost come full circle because, you do, like we do at times rely on the exterior presence to open the door for us, but it's what you have and your wits and your, and your smarts and the conversation that you have to give, that what happens when you don't have that you can rely on that. And now that you have beautiful hair and, it's yours. But you've come full circle on, do you still feel like you think the same way, or have you just overcome that entire thing where you walk into a room and you're like zeroing in on the person you need to meet and how you're going to get there? Are you still or does it come full circle where you have the full package in your head?
Well, what I realized is that my pitch didn't change just because my hair did, so I still meant the same thing. I still did the same job.
Without a doubt. Yep.
And so I could be okay saying the same pitch and I would still get the same results. And also that people, thank God out there weren't like, her hair's weird, I'm not going to send her business, or there's something off with her like hairline, I'm not going to send her business. Nobody, I didn't feel rejected by people because I was afraid of what they thought of me, which is nice for a change, that humans were decent. But I just kind of now that I it's still a little both. Like I still rely on my hair, like I'm sure you do with yours, But
I have one thing, Kristin. I got one thing going for me. I'm 5'6". I have okay hair. Like that's it. That's all I got.
That's true. But I definitely think that it just put things into perspective for me, and it doesn't matter, what you look like, what you're wearing, what color your hair is. If you do a good job, you're going to get results.
But that's all what you're saying, you say it so like clearly and so normal, but these are all the things that our brain tells us, right? And again, it's not anybody. The world is
Right.
not, rejecting us. We rejected ourselves before we walked into the room. And I
Yes.
totally understand why it would happen. But I why your brain does it, but it's like to overcome that without a sense of, you could crawl into a hole and not do anything. And which a
Right.
lot of people do. I see paralysis a lot in our industry, because of the fear, and you've just overcome it every single time, whether you're in a new city, because as you're going to a new city, in the back of your head, are you telling yourself like, I got to redo this all over again? And
I'm complaining to my husband like all day, like, look at all these sacrifices I'm making for you to go talk to Popovich on the court. Like, oh, big,
yeah,
like, bummer job for you, like, yeah, no, I certainly complained to the people closest to me.
well, the good news is you had one of the coolest bosses, Ray Saldana, who's one of my good friends, and I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of Ray. She when this airs, she's gonna give me so much crap about it, because anytime she sees me, she gives me crap about it. But no, I mean, like, having the ability to, I think we're so fortunate to be in the industry we're in, because back in 2008 and 2009, when we all, for those of us that were industry, got really burned by it, we've been waiting for the next shoe to drop. And, because that's just how our psyche works. And we've been really fortunate to kind of get through this stay-at-home order, if you will,
Yeah.
where we're we're in the middle of a pandemic right now as we speak. It doesn't look like it's getting better. I think we just crossed 6 million or cases. And I emailed you yesterday, and on your out of office, it said, I'm busy. Like, we got a lot of people, we got a lot of people coming to me, and it might take me just a little bit longer to get to you, which I think was really cool of you. But we're so fortunate to be in the industry we're in, right? And one of the things that I'm noticing about you, Kristin, that is kind of different from a lot of people that I know, is I think there's two types of people. I mentioned this to you earlier. There's people who have coaches and people who don't have coaches. And you subscribe to the coach idea. And not only did you do it with your business, but even when you were going through your medical stuff, you mentioned that you were part of communities, helping people, helping one another, which is super like powerful to me, because I think that says a lot about your character, and that you realize you're just not going to get through it alone. And you need the community. But has having a coach really helped you in your business and held you accountable to it? And would you recommend it?
Yeah, I would and I would recommend it if you have the same, personality that I do, which I'm really good at following instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm lazy in the sense that I don't want to reinvent the wheel. If you already know that these 7 things are going to make me over
Yeah.
6 figures, then I'm just going to do the 7 things, because I don't want to like figure it out on my own. And then I have a desire to, please my boss. I want to be, Hope's favorite client, right? I want to be the favorite, like, this is my little officer that does everything right and check, and so when I have that in my, personality. So Hope will say, okay, what do you want to work on? And I'm like, well, I'm afraid of doing this. And she's like, okay, so we'll do that 3 times this week, 3 times next week. And then when we have our call, we'll go over it. And I can't show up to that call and be like, I didn't do it. I can't. Like, again, what's more motivating, the fear of doing the action or the fear of disappointing Hope? Okay, it's disappoint that will win every time. Somebody not thinking I'm, the perfect student. So I will do whatever's scary, because the other option is worse for me.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's interesting. We talked about it earlier, but hacks, it's like your hack to hustle is to not disappoint. But at the end of the day, it's still hustle. You're still doing the work. And so if somebody points and says, we need to do XYZ, you're going to do it because you don't want to let anybody down. So what do you say to an LO who, better yet, I'm going to ask it a different way. What would you say to Kristin back in 2014 when she was entering the business, that that you wish you would have said to her back then?
I think that one of the things that I had to realize, and it was a lesson that I had to learn, I think I still have to learn, is that this isn't personal. Anything that goes on is not personal. You know, whether somebody decided to go elsewhere after I spent 6 months repairing their credit, you know, like it's not because they were like, Kristin, we think you're less than X loan officer over here. It's business. And I think there were times where, and maybe still to this day, that I take things personal. If like a buyer was like, oh, we went with a different lender. And I'm like, what? Like, but it's me, you know? And then it's like, okay, but like for whatever the reason is that they chose to go with the different loan officers, it actually had nothing to do with me as a person, you know? And then one of the things that has sort of come 180 for me in the past, when people would go with a different lender, I would be like, it's because I'm not good enough. And now my thought is, God, you would like, I feel sorry for you because I would have given you the best experience, like the least stress, the smoothest ride. That would have been what I could have offered. And, you know, and that's okay. You're going to find out that, you know, the grass isn't greener on the other side, but that's your choice, you know?
That is one that's super powerful, because this is like such a education in how to deal with rejection, and you know, all the things that come along with it. And you've had so many things that have happened that would, for anybody, give you all these, you know, thoughts, and you just keep overcoming, and you keep showing up, and you keep doing amazing things. This is kind of an odd question, but I am curious about it. You know, you're a Hanson. You have the fortunate or unfortunate, depending on which way you want to look at it, but being a Hanson and being in a family that is doing amazing things for the mortgage industry, and still doing amazing things, does that help you, or do you feel like sometimes that's a shadow that you're living under? I mean, I'm very curious from your perspective on that.
I think it's more helpful than hurtful. However, there are downsides. That branch in Bakersfield that I was started at, that was before we became loanDepot, or maybe we were merging from iMortgage. I'm not sure. That manager decided to go accept like a big sign-on bonus with a different company and take off her people.
How is this happening under your nose? Did you know about it, or was there rumors?
I had like heard stuff, and I was asking my friends that I worked with, like, is something going, like, do it? And then like, it was like one day everybody was gone and I was the only one there. And it was like, well, I wasn't, there was me and like one other person, and or you know, a couple of people that didn't get invited to go. And obviously they're not going to invite me, because then I would
tip
probably
off everything.
Assume that I would tell my dad, you know, which is probably a fair assumption. But it was like so heartbreaking, because I was like, maybe I would have gone with you. Like, what am I going to do now? I don't
all of a sudden you want to be a part of the club that you weren't invited to, like just immediately.
Right. Like my dad's not going to help me do business out here.
This is so cool.
So that was like, that was really traumatic for me. And then fortunately I got swiped up and moved to San Antonio. So I was like, whatever. That was a bad experience.
I never knew this story. This is like such an amazing story.
It was not good. And then, you know, other times, like I will see people say like, hey, in an email, not knowing I'm CC'd on it or whatever, like that's Alex's sister, or like that's his daughter. So like, you know, whatever. And I really don't want people to think that like, I'm just going to run to my dad or my brother all the time. Like I try to use the chain of command that we have. I try not to ask for special treatment or do anything different, because I really don't want anyone to take my success away from me, because I
without a doubt,
so hard to meet. You know, I still have the last name Hanson, but now like there's a Kristin, and it's different than Alec, and it's different than Dan. Heavily influenced by the two, but I still earned what I've gotten.
Well, you have. And by the way, I won't refer anyone to anyone else other than you, because you have taken care of all the clients that I've sent you and been just amazing. So no, I think you're legit on what you do. And I love your story, because this is like the stuff that we want to hear about in terms of how do you overcome, all those things that your mind tells you that don't really exist, but you're hearing it from somebody who's ultra successful that goes through it as well. And I think that's really where it resonates with a lot of folks, because you've seen tremendous success. And I will tell you, from an outsider looking in, I know you've hustled your own way. So where do you go from here, Kristin? I mean, like, do you see yourself being a leader? We're lacking women leaders in our industry, and
That I will agree with. Marissa Moore is a hero.
amazing.
And just women to look up to. But I really don't know. I do get to see a lot of the, things that my dad and my brother both kind of have on their plate and have to deal with. And I gotta say, I don't know if I would like that. I think I heard when I was listening to Sean and you on your podcast, he was saying that he like has a complaint department that he didn't know was that, and it's just, and I can see that a lot. And I complain. Like I have complaints as a loan officer, like, where's this? This needs to be faster. What's happening with this? So I have those complaints to my boss. And then, my dad and my brother have so many people under them that are making those same complaints. So I kind of am like, I don't know if that's really I think I'd rather be a complainer than go with all the complaints.
Well, this is funny because, I used to call this, this is a bad thing, but I actually have learned that it's a thing that actually is helpful. And I'm not good at this. And anybody who works with me will tell you, like, if somebody comes to complain, I'm like a deer in headlights, just like, is there a complaint? Like I think it was me that said it. Is there a complaint, like a headline above my desk that says, bring all your complaints to me? Like, I'll help you, but this is a time issue. Like, I don't want to hear the complaint, but a lot of times that's the relief valve of the pressure, is to just get it off your chest and get it heard. And there's people like, actually, I remember Dan saying this, like, a lot of times we tend to be therapists in our roles because we're helping people through all these emotions that come with stress and
Right.
the manufacturing process that we find ourselves in. And so, but it's pretty amazing. So I think the reason that I asked the question is because you subscribe to coaching. Your personal experience that I'm hearing, is really in line with how people connect with other people, right? So anyway, what I was going to say is, it used to be a bad thing to bleed, if quote unquote bleed with your people, because you're supposed to hold the corporate line. But I think when you bleed with your people and you find an appropriate way to do so, then there is a way to have empathy with what they're going through and relate in a different way, versus just constantly keeping a company line and, yep, that's the way we're going to do it. It's the best decision in the world. Well, sometimes it's not the best decision. It sucks,
Right.
but we got to get through it, and that's the only option that we have at this point. But I feel like I'm rambling, but Kristin, I got to tell you, like, this is not what I was expecting. And I don't know what I was expecting, but I knew that I wanted to meet you. And I was like, what better way than to do it on a podcast and hear your amazing story? And you have all these amazing qualities. So I really appreciate you taking the time today to meet with me. So how do people get in touch with you that want to do business with you? So where are you licensed?
California, Texas, and Florida. All 3 states that I've had to live in, over my little career here.
Well, very cool. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
khanson@loandepot.com.
Boom. All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is awesome. This is really fun. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon, Kristin.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.